Thank you for joining me on this little journey. I just retired from Xerox at the end of December, so I'm going to be talking about my experience there. I was there since 2003, a lot of my work in the innovation side and working with research. And as soon as the slide comes up, we can start. So I guess before we get started, I can at least talk a little bit about some of the things. Yesterday, there was a lot of discussion about looking at trends in the future. And I think that's one thing we do a really good job at Xerox. And I'm going to touch upon those trends and how they impact healthcare and pharma and life sciences and how we were developing solutions in that space. The other thing I think Xerox was good at was inventing, but not so much commercializing. And we'll touch upon some of that too. There's many other folks who have picked up a lot of our ideas and made millions and billions of dollars off of them. But a lot of those ideas came out of our research centers. So how are we doing, guys? Yeah, everybody get up and stand. Take a break. So much for technology. So how many of you know that Xerox is in the healthcare space and pharma space? A very small number of hands and people I talked to in the last couple days were surprised. We did about $3 billion of our portfolio was in healthcare, so a significant amount of work. And a lot of our work was behind the scenes. So many hospitals in the United States use our products and services. Many of the health plan, the insurance carriers use our services. Many large employers use our consulting services at Buck for designing benefits portfolios for their employees and delivering those packages. So we have a huge call center, a lot of nurses behind the scenes. And the reason you don't even know it's healthcare is because when you're picking up the phone and you're calling Brigham Women's or you're talking to Aetna, you're maybe talking to a Xerox employee. And we're doing really well. So we'll talk about my presentation without slides if we can't get there. Some of the big trends that we were following at Xerox that really influenced us were IoT. I'm not going to talk so much about IoT, but machine learning and sensing. Machine learning and sensing, a lot of work being done in that space in healthcare. And Mark Weiser, I don't know, how many of you know Mark Weiser from Park? He's no longer alive. He was really the founder, the father of ubiquitous computing. And the first slide that I had was really a picture of him back in the 80s, where he was demonstrating this new invention that he had created. And on it, he had the words MPAD. It looks just like an iPad. So this guy really had the vision of where things could go and could see the foundation of it. And really, when he talked about ubiquitous computing, it really is getting to the point where things blend right into the future, and you don't even think about it. It's just happening. And so, you know, really cool vision on his part in the 80s. It's really too bad that we didn't execute on it, but, you know, it's here today. So the future's already here. It's not evenly distributed. It's actually getting distributed. We're going to see more about it. Mark talked about machines talking to machines and how much is out there right now if we look in terms of us as users of these consumables. And if we look at the value on connected, this is a slide that I took from The Economist, but how much we could save with machines. So if we look at GDP, we needed 2% to improve energy yesterday. Maybe we can find it by leveraging connected machines, and we can have better energy in the globe. So I talked about these three disruptive waves. I'm going to talk about printing and smart tags, what we're doing in that space. And I'm going to talk about machine intelligence. I'm also going to talk a little bit about blockchain, because that in healthcare is another area that we've entered into. So let's talk about smart sensing. So Xerox created some solutions with a company called Thin Film. And if you were at a Lux event 2 or 3 years ago, I think they outlined the sensor market. Thin Film was in there, Park was in there. Well, we joined forces with them. They were a startup in our space out in Palo Alto. They needed help from us. We wrote the memory and the logic. They had the great silicon solution, and we had some customers come to us, and it was started with the gaming industry, with kids, and they needed some protection on that. They wanted to make sure that there was no counterfeit on their product. And we had to make it so that kids, if they got a hold of the tag, it wouldn't do any harm if they swallowed it, ate it, or whatever, and it could handle sticky fingers. So those challenges were met early on with this solution, but it was costly. So we had to get that price point down. And what we've done now is we've created a solution, and I'll walk through it. So starting with wine. If you think about wine, and you think of a high-end wine, and you want to protect that as counterfeit, what could you do? You can create smart tags. And we have a watch manufacturer using it where they embed it right into the actual watch so that when you take it in to get it repaired, they actually know that's the real deal. But let's make it even better. Let's take the wine journey. Wine needs to be stored at a certain temperature. Many of us have wine cellars. We pride our collection. We want to bring it out for a special meal. But you also want to make sure the temperature of your wine cellar maintains at a certain temperature point. So what if you can get it to start measuring that temperature? So that's where we're at right now. These labels are being printed. They're very low cost. We started at about 4 cents. It's being mass produced up in a Rochester plant. And the point that we want to get to is about under a penny. But these are doing small jobs. I mean, 10 bits of memory, read-writable. We've added a cryptocurrency component to it for certain markets. And what we've done is we've put this into several of the pharmaceutical chains. So if they've got drugs that have to move through FedEx or some other transportation, and they have to maintain a certain temperature, and say FedEx was on the hook for insurance because that arrived at the wrong temperature and they were liable, now they can actually measure it. Every time it changes custody, they know that that particular drug was delivered the way it should have been delivered. Or, for instance, if you had drugs that you want to know, the consumer opened the box, okay? These are the types of things that we're trying to do. Small steps right now. But then if you look at what you need to be able to do, you have to think about flexibility, right? It's going to go on any kind of object. So we're really thinking the Internet of Things. We talked about sensors and how they're going to play this huge role. I really feel they're going to be embedded. So we're working on this chipless solution where it will actually be embedded in this plastic. You won't even know it's there. And then it'll be in the rug, or it'll be in the wall, or it'll be in a cup. And so think about now you've got connected objects. And let's take that into machine intelligence where the objects are talking to objects. I'm not even involved in the room or the conversation. So this is really where we're headed. If you get to go to Park, we have these on display, especially the one in the middle, which is our chipless solution. But really looking at sensors, lots of silicon sensors, low power, maybe even using ambient power in a room, and producing these at a massive amount at under a penny. Here's some examples of where we see them in the connected and individualized precision. And we talked about cars and how many sensors are in cars, talked about packaging, we talked about things like, just basic cadavers. So let's talk about automated real-time insights. So a lot of conversation about IoT and machine learning. And I think the big thing that we need to understand is machine learning is a multiplicative process. So you have machines learning, they're on 24/7. It's not like human beings doing work. So once we start to get machines talking to machines, they don't turn off unless we turn them off. And so they're actually learning, and there's going to be this leapfrog. I really feel that we're going to see a huge jump here. We talked about a lot this morning about vision, how important it is for vision, humans being able to see and hear. Xerox has technology right now. We had it probably 4 or 5 years ago where we worked with the highway infrastructure. The EasyPass system is one of them that we run behind the scenes. The cameras actually can see into the car and see your face. And in these HOV lanes, we can actually tell the blood is flowing through your body, and hey, there's a dummy there. Get this guy because he's not supposed to be in the HOV lane. You guys don't even know that's going on. So it's already there. It's happening. So we talked about this. It's really important for us to be able to hear, to speak, and to read. And if you think about it, we go back to the work that we do in our R&D, and you think it's simple, right? It isn't. You got to be able to have somebody look at a cat, know it's a cat, and that's all machine learning going on. And that's the kind of work we do in our research centers. And so these are some examples. We have out of our Grenoble's lab doing this type of work with legal documents. So if you think about lawyers and they're trying to get ready for a court case, and they have to go through piles and piles of information. Well, what if you could use machine learning and it just pulls up the one document you need? Wouldn't that be great? I know my doctor would love this because when I go for a physical, he's between the EMR and the physical file. They only loaded so much in the EMR, and then I've been seeing him since I've lived in Simsbury, Connecticut, 20 years. And he'll go and grab the file, and it'll be flip, 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 and then he'll find what he's looking for. And he'll tear it out and say, put that in the EMR. Well, that shouldn't have to be the way it is. So real-time insights, we talked about this. This is the edge of transportation, how important this is. Important to driverless cars, important to autonomous, but also important to our safety. And if we can get all of this right, it's really going to change the world for the better. So this is a product we rolled out last year. We partnered with a couple of different startups, and it's really livable cities. So if you think of human beings want to be able to pick and choose how they commute, and they may want to use a few different ways of getting to a particular place. They may want to walk part way. They may want to grab the T. They may want to take an Uber. So let's give them a connected solution so that they can plot out their course. I would love to see this done in the travel industry. I would like somebody knows I booked a flight on JetBlue to get to Boston. You know, I was staying at the Westin. I had to get an Uber. All of those were disconnected. That experience could have been connected. And it would have made me a very happy consumer. So these are some of the real-time insights. So one of the things that we did is we do work study practices, we do ethnography studies where we actually go into the hospitals and watch how the nurses and the doctors work. And with the EMRs, what happened was they were creating all these sticky notes and attaching them to the file. So you'd see these stickies all over, and then they wouldn't get into the EMR. And so what we tried to do was create a dashboard that they could follow, so that they could see what it was they were treating in this patient in room 202, what were the issues, what were the drugs, all in a very visual manner that was right by the bedside. This is, we talked about cameras, being able to see your face. So about 7 years ago, we started to do work on FLIR cameras with our researchers up in Rochester. And we ran preclinical trials. We were able to actually do your blood pressure, your blood flow. We were able to start to detect AFib, breast cancer, all contactless, neuropathy in the foot. The problem is, in the US, it takes a long time to get that technology developed and moved forward because we have all these regulations. So we're doing it in third world countries. And these are implemented pretty heavily in India at the hospitals. So I can't wait till contactless mammograms happen with a camera. And they're finding basically the ground truth on this is better. They're detecting breast cancer before a mammogram picks it up. So I really do think that giving this machine learning, giving cameras the ability to see and using that for the greater good of our healthcare can be a whole new way of addressing problems in the future. The other is building human relationships. So we talked about this today in the Amazon Echo and how, using that, being able to call 911. Someone was telling me yesterday their mom had the first alert, but then she fell and became unconscious and couldn't press it, or didn't want to because she didn't want anybody to come to see her. She felt like she was, so we have to start thinking about these situations, being able to age in place. So I want to talk a little bit about blockchain. Blockchain, so Bitcoin, people know what blockchain is, I assume, in the room. Bitcoin really piloted this, but we started to look at it last year with some of the startups that we do work with, that we're partnered with, and we said, hey, there's a play for this in healthcare, so let's explore it. And I'll just tell you, McKinsey came out with an article, I think it was last week, really well done. Go on and look at it in healthcare. They touch upon it. But this is something that I think in the future we'll see this play into our space. So if we look at healthcare today, it's really complex. If it was so easy to fix, the Congress would have come up with a better plan a few weeks ago, right? It really is complicated. You've got issues even with territory. So you might have a hospital system who really doesn't want to take their information and transfer it over here, or a health care payer an insurance company that manages you. It's really complicated. And I've been in this business since 1981. When we had indemnity plans. And it's just it's like somebody took rubber bands and just tossed them on top of everything. What we really need to start thinking about is a healthcare tomorrow where we really decentralize it and we have peer networks and we have encrypted and secure information. It's distributed and that the patient actually owns the data. I mean, how many of us can get at our data today? We can get at our FICO score and can ask for a report, but it's really hard to get at this and make it low cost. So blockchain's really being looked at. What we're doing is we're sitting at the table with other companies, some that are in the room, healthcare providers, some startups, and Xerox to talk this through. So if you look at the components and the potential benefits that we've laid out, really the applications are endless because it really can attack all the grunt work that has to be done to really support healthcare. And then if you look at the transaction network, it can really support that. So it's got a great potential. So you're probably asking, why aren't we doing this? Well, there's a lot of problems because we implemented healthcare reform. And with healthcare reform came a myriad of new vendors into the mix. And they've really got their hooks into the doctors and the hospital systems, and that costs a lot of money to implement. So really the first thing is, if you look at the transfer cost, that could be very high. To be able to shift from one platform or multiple platforms onto a blockchain, it could be high. Doctors are very busy. They have immense workloads. We're losing doctors. It's really hard. I just wonder when my doctor will leave the system. So they just don't have the time, and so they'd have to learn the new technology. And then the maturity. So you don't want to really test it in healthcare first. So it's kind of new. We want to see how it goes into other industries first. But for us, we want maturity because this is a secure, highly personal environment dealing with our healthcare, and you don't want to enter into it. So, they're basically, McKinsey came out in their report. This is the report that I mentioned. They're saying 5 years. We may see potential in 5 years, but something to keep an eye on. It's a future trend that you should really learn as much as you can about it and keep an eye on, because it can be entering all of our industries. So let me go back. I went forward. So I want to thank you. I think I did pretty good. We have time for some questions. And I think I don't know if I put a slide in it. No, I didn't. I had a slide that I had sent with some examples of where we were putting sensors in, but I want to thank everybody.
Thank you very much, Denise, and apologies for the mix-up.
That's all right.
We do have time for questions, so have any questions for Denise? It's fascinating to see the connections that get made. We heard about machine vision earlier for preventing car accidents,
Yes.
and the similar technology and concept for detecting breast cancer is pretty amazing.
We have one question.
We have a question in the back there, yeah.
Hi, Denise. I promised you I would ask you a question. I was
Thanks.
serious. Can you talk a little bit more about non-sensor sensing? I'm very interested in this as a B2B chemical supplier. I think the closer we can bring sensing to the molecular level, then the more influence we have in both the data collection as well as the data utilization.
So the thing about our R&D work is we get very influenced by our customers, right? They tend to send us in certain directions. And I don't really know if we're doing that much work in the chemical area, and I'm not aware of it because my background's more in the healthcare and pharma and life sciences. But it's certainly something I could ask and find out for you.
Yep.
So it has a two-way authentication factor. Right now, it requires you to buy a device, a Snap-on device to the smartphone. That device is probably $15. It started out at $40. We've gotten the price point down, but eventually, yes, that's where we're headed. I was going to bring some samples, but I don't even know if I have any more now that I've retired. They're very small, though. I want to tell you, they're very small. You'll be surprised. Any other questions? Pardon?
It's okay. It's more of a comment. I have an 85-year-old mother-in-law, and she has one of those devices, right?
The first, yeah.
First aid, right? And she would also be the one to say, "Don't come and get me because I'm
Yeah, this is a problem.
in my night clothes or something." And I know she's very private. And I love the fact that you incorporate stress and heat as a key element of healthcare. Living on your own and being able to remain physically healthy and sound-minded, that is a quality of life issue that's very important.
Well, I even see a future where when all this is connected, the mirror now becomes that camera and is scanning you to make sure you're good to go for the day. We don't pick up any melanoma or, I mean, you know, I know you guys are laughing, but I really see that vision happening. I really do, and I think it really gives people the ability to age in place. I mean, we're all going to be there one day. Who wants to be in a nursing home? You're welcome.
It's good. We got time for one more question up here in the front. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, thank you. Great talk. But to that point, what about the privacy issue?
Well, that's going to be a big issue, and I would have addressed that, but that wasn't really my focus of my talk, but privacy and security. And quite honestly, everybody, we opt in on apps that we're downloading, and nobody's reading the privacy terms before they check the box. I mean, we all just check it and get the app, right? There was a whole discussion. I don't know if anybody picked up on an NPR I think it was about a week ago, there was this whole thing about opting in versus opting out of privacy and which way should we go. And I thought that was a really good discussion. It's almost like the 401k with our employees. Do we opt in or opt out? You know, so that we get better participation. But personally, if it was me and I was a senior or I had a mom and I lived 3,000 miles away and I could assure her well-being, I would opt in. What do you have to lose at that point?
All right. Well, thank you very much,
you.
Denise.